Hello. Today is day 2 of my experiment in creating Feldenkrais daily ditties. And I thought that today I would focus on something that you and many people are probably doing much more of in these days of lockdown. Sitting. So how can we be alive in our sitting? But before I go into that, I thought I'd share 4 ideas to bear in mind that really are key ideas in the Feldenkrais method and that can contribute to your experience of lively sitting. We'll start with the idea that movement is a portal, an entry point, and paying attention is your traveling companion. Pausing in the stillness between thought and action might be a challenge, and awareness and knowing yourself in a different way are some of the gifts from experience. So, for lively sitting, please bring your attention to how you're sitting. Now, if you're not sitting, find some place to sit, some surface to sit on. And as you sit, draw your attention to the following questions. Are you bearing your weight evenly through the left and the right sides of yourself into the surface on which you're sitting? Do you feel yourself pressing more through one side of your pelvis into whatever surface on which you're sitting? Do you feel yourself slouching, sitting tall, leaning backward, tilted forwards? Do you have your back pegged to a chair back if you're in the chair, or a wall if you're sitting on the floor against a wall? Are you turned to one side in some way? Are you looking downwards? Are you looking upwards? Are you looking to one side? Could you sit as you are indefinitely? Or do you find yourself wanting to shift or change how you're organizing yourself in order to sit more comfortably? So you have a head and you have a pelvis, and in between the two is your spine, like a chain or a string of pearls or a bridge. I'm not quite sure what image might work for you, but can you imagine the shape of your spine connecting your head and your pelvis? How you're sitting reflects some pattern of organization, as clear or as fuzzy as it might be at this moment in time. So let's see what happens to your sitting pattern if you explore a few movements. Feel free to pause the video at any time to give yourself more time for self-exploration and discovery. So here's another little piece for your imagination. Imagine that the left and the right sides of your pelvis are feet, a left foot and a right foot. Now, granted, these 2 feet are connected to each other. So, pick one side of the pelvis and lift it as if it were a foot, and as if it were to take a step forwards and then return, and a step backwards and return. What do you notice? Is this an easy movement for you? Is it a challenging movement? Do you find yourself hesitating, moving smoothly, or moving in a jerky kind of a way? The answers to those questions tell you something about your pattern of organization. So as you lift the side of the pelvis that you've chosen to lift and step it forward, return, step it backward and return, what do you notice that the other side of your pelvis is doing? What happens between the contact of that side of the pelvis and the surface that you're on? As you step this side of your pelvis forwards and return, or backwards and return, Do you sense movement in your ribs? Do you feel like you're getting taller or shorter or staying the same height within yourself as you take this step forwards and step backward with your pelvis foot? Does the direction you look shift as you step this side of your pelvis forward, backward? Pause for a moment. Pause in that stillness between thought and action. Rest. As you rest, your brain is working on this movement puzzle, wondering what you're going to do next. Try the movement again with the same side of your pelvis, stepping forward, back, stepping backwards and returning. Maybe something has changed in the ease of the movement or in your ability to notice what you're doing. Okay, let that go and try the same movement with the other side of your pelvis, the other pelvis foot. Lift it, bring it forwards as if it were to take a step, and then return it back to where you started. Take a step backward with this side of the pelvis and return it to where it was. And as you do that, notice the contact that the other side of your pelvis is making with the surface that you're on, or any movement taking place in your ribs, or whether you feel like your sensation of the height of yourself is changing as you take this step forward and step backward with your pelvis foot on this side, or the direction that your gaze goes. Is this the side that's more challenging for you to move in this step-like pattern, forward and backward over the surface that you're on? Or is it the side that feels more coordinated, the movement's more smooth? We tend to be asymmetrical in the ease with which we can do movements. And then alternate. Alternate first, stepping, if you will, forwards with one side of the pelvis, and then stepping a second step forward with the other side of your pelvis, until you get to the forward edge of a chair if you're on it, or if you're on the floor, a few steps forward, and then reverse that movement and step backwards, if you will, lifting and bringing one side of the pelvis down, and then lifting and bringing the other side of your pelvis down in this walking-like pattern. Just notice if there are differences with how your right side of your pelvis moves forward compared to the left, how the left side of the pelvis moves backwards in a stepping way compared to the right. Does this movement remind you of a time when you were younger? Perhaps in your early years, you scooted yourself across the floor to get to something that you wanted because you had not yet learned how to stand and walk on 2 feet. So your pelvis were kind of like your feet, your pelvis and your legs. And then pause, let it go. Take a breath. And after playing with this lively sitting, what do you notice about how you're sitting now? Has something changed for you? Particularly if you paused the video and took more time to explore these stepping-like movements. Take your time to scan how you're bearing your weight into the surface that you're sitting on now. Your level of comfort within yourself. Where you're looking. Maybe you can imagine the shape of your spine connecting your head and your pelvis in a way a little different than a few moments ago. Well, that's the end of today's Little Feldenkrais Daily Ditty. Look forward to tomorrow and what its focus might be. In the meanwhile, play with lively sitting. There's so many different ways that you can move yourself on the surface on which you're sitting to bring a little bit of life into the trunk of your body, a little bit of flexibility into your systems. And maybe you'll see yourself in a slightly different way. Bye for now.